Hello everyone, welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Before we get on with the show, today's podcast is sponsored by Altitude Tea. Altitude Tea specializes in rare and exotic teas you can't find on supermarket shelves. Teas grown on high altitudes are more nutrient-dense due to the cold nights and misty peaks that slows the growth of the tea plant, leading to a higher concentration of aromatic oils and richer flavors. They are located in Waterloo and they do private tea ceremonies where you can learn how to drink tea mindfully using a traditional gongfu set and have over 20 varieties of tea to choose from. For our listeners, you can use the code BEYOND at checkout for 15% off. Today, we have the founders of Raising Our Vibrations Meditations, Kevin Schoeninger and Stephen Altair. Kevin is an author and teacher of mind-body training. Kevin graduated from Villanova University in 1986 with a master's degree in philosophy and is certified as a personal trainer, life coach, Qigong meditation master instructor, and Holy Fire Karuna Reiki master teacher. He has been writing about and teaching these techniques for over 35 years. Stephen is also an author and teacher of Light Body Awakening, including mindfulness and meditation. Stephen graduated from Auckland and Otago University with degrees in education and business and was certified as a counsellor with Counsellors and Psychotherapists Association of New South Wales in Australia. He has been writing and teaching meditation techniques for over 30 years. I hope you enjoy our diverse conversations about meditations. Everyone, please help me welcome Kevin and Stephen. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for coming on today. Thank you. It's my first time interviewing two people on the podcast and in two different time zones. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we're used to doing the time zone juggle with the classes we teach on Zoom all over the world. Yeah, it's evening where I am. I think it's, midday for you guys?
Yes. I really do appreciate it, guys, for making the time in both the time zones. I know you're both very busy, so I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
No, we're grateful for the opportunity, Kevin. I mean, it's always lovely to connect with everybody that's going to listen to this. So thank to all who are listening, much love and blessings to you all. And I hope you're having a very beautiful day.
All right. I wanted to start the conversation off by asking about your journey to begin raising our vibrations together. How did that come about? Maybe we could start with Kevin and followed by Stephen.
Okay, great. Let's see. The fall of 2018, I took a trip to Japan, to Karama, Japan in Kyoto, and on a meditation and Reiki retreat to Mount Karama, and which was the birthplace of modern Reiki. And coming back from that trip, the day I got back from the trip, I get a message from a friend of both of ours that said, I have a person you have to meet in Japan. I was like, I just got back from Japan yesterday. And so that person was Stephen, and he lives outside of Tokyo. And so our mutual acquaintance, Dr. Ruth Anderson, who runs Enlightened World Network, said, you two have uncanny similarities, and I just think you two just have to meet. And no sooner had I responded to that than Stephen FaceTimed me, and we set a time to meet on Zoom, and we've been meeting at least 2 to 3 times a week, every week since then. And as we initially were scheduled by Ruth to interview each other about books we had just published. Stephen had just published Diary of a Yogi, and I had just published a book called Clear, Quiet Mind. And so we interviewed each other about our books, and in doing that, we read each other's books and found out that we just had amazing similarities in terms of our life of practicing spiritual practices, meditation practices, all the way. I mean, it was uncanny. We had both done Reiki and Qigong and Kriya Yoga and centering prayer and Tai Chi and on Buddhist meditation. And so as we got to know each other and shared our experiences and started talking about what we were teaching to people, we just said, oh, we've got to write a book about this. And we started writing a book, and the book became a meditation course, and the meditation course turned into a meditation app and a short intro course and a Facebook group. And here we are today running all that together. And so that's the overview, but it was really amazing that we just felt like right from the moment we talked to each other, we were just in sync. And Stephen is one of the people that I would say, Stephen is the person in my life who, when I'm talking about my practice or talking about the insights or experiences I've had, he just knows exactly what I'm talking about. I don't have to explain anything to him. He's already right there and just in sync with me and just adding to what I have to say and deepening my practice. And I think vice versa. So there's my version of it. Stephen, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll work backwards from Kevin and say that, yeah, Kevin is the person I've been most in sync with practices, even to the point where, Kevin, you'll remember we recorded brainwaves in Muse, and we couldn't get over the fact that right from the very beginning, that the brainwaves had this similar arc. So we were really pretty awestruck by the fact that not only did we have so much in common with our practices, but even our brainwaves look the same. And to some people that say, oh, don't most people's brainwave signatures look the same? No, because in a particular style and fashion that Muse and Mind Monitor record it, there's a way of showing brainwaves and brain patterns that, is quite distinct to each individual. And one of these was this very strong gamma pattern followed by a very strong theta pattern. And when Kevin and I did these particular practices, and we shared them on the Muse community way back then. So this is a number of years ago. It was clear our patterns looked almost identical to each other. They had the same wave followed by the same dip, and it didn't look like anybody else's. So we had this.
It was a surprise to us, right? We thought, oh, we were just sharing Muse graphs between us, and we're like, oh, everybody probably gets this when they do this practice. And that's how we thought about it until we started to see a lot of other graphs and get a lot of kickback about ours.
Yeah, because we just presumed this, exactly like Kevin said, because we were so in sync with each other. We thought, oh, how is it possible for us to be in sync? And there must be loads of people showing these same results. But of course, when we shared them, we started to realize, oh, actually, no, people don't normally show that kind of pattern. So that was one thing that I knew right from the beginning anyway, when Kevin and I were sharing that. We were sharing, as Kevin said, everything from centering prayer to Kriya Yoga and Qigong and Tai Chi and all the types of practices, from Buddhist practices to practices of energy breathing techniques and so on, that all of them were so in sync that and exactly as Kevin said, I could share something with him. He'd know exactly what I meant. And then he could say, oh, if you do this, does this happen? And then I'd do that. Oh, yeah, that. And then I'd say to Kevin, if we do this, does that happen? So we were constantly sharing, refining, sharing. So it was like being in a monastery with another monk and sharing, because I have spent time in monasteries with other monks and shared. And Kevin was really that person. And I thought, oh, we must have some fairly exquisite past lives together, which I'll talk about later, because there is one in particular that kind of came up for us. And going back to how we met, I'd been working, just as Kevin has said, I was working prior to this with Dr. Ruth Anderson, and she had also had books published, and I'd had books published prior to this, and I just put out a new book called Diary of a Yogi. And at first she said, oh, look, I'm setting up this new television channel. So we were on a pay TV kind of channel that she had organized with a friend of hers. And so we'd been doing videos for that. And she said, I've just thought of this new author channel. And so it was all being streamed and so on and so forth. So we were just part of the streaming service. And I'm going to do an author's corner. And maybe I could interview you about your book. And I said, yeah, sure. So we had that organized. And then she said, this person I know, he's in the area, and he bears this uncanny resemblance to you. And I said, in terms of and she said, why don't you interview her? I'll interview you and then you interview him. And I said, yeah, okay, that sounds a good idea. And then a little bit further, she was going, there's so much in common between, I really think you two should meet. And you should interview Kevin, and Kevin could interview you about your books. And I said, oh, okay. So we were gradually progressing to this obvious meeting point. And then when we started to share, and I read Kevin's book and he read mine, they're very different styles, but the actual content was incredibly similar in terms of the styles and practices that we'd done. So when we interviewed each other, it was really obvious that we should do something together. And then, as Kevin said, we wrote the book, and the course came out of the book, and we developed an app, and then we've developed teach training from the courses. So we've got teachers now teaching the courses that we'd originally, and starting to develop their own styles of that. And then out of all this, we've also done a course that's totally digitally online called The Inner Secret that people have also loved. So there's been all these beautiful unfoldment, and it's really easy with Kevin. It's the amazing thing is we haven't physically met in this life, although I'm absolutely sure we've physically met in other lives. And so there's an incredible easefulness of it that's really pretty, sublime, really. Kevin is the one person, as Kevin said in reverse, Kevin is the one person I can talk to, and I know he actually knows intimately exactly what I'm talking about. So we used to talk about various higher states of consciousness, various transcendent states. And quite often I might talk about those to somebody and they'll look at me a bit blankly because it's clear that they're not experiencing those every day. But Kevin knew exactly what I meant when I used particular cues or states or insights that, are described in many of the maps of insight and consciousness, but are not necessarily everybody's either cup of tea or necessarily even their journey. But because Kevin had been down a lot of different paths and explored them in depth, he was able to, like me, come at it from a lot of different perspectives, and especially from quite a secular, in one way of saying it, perspective where we were both open to it not necessarily being part of any one traditional path, but incorporating many of them, which gives people a lot of tools in their toolkit with which to look back at the signature of their brain and heart and gut, or the signature of their consciousness and the way that they're embodying it, and be really open to what they find there. So by exploring these different states, we were able to open to that. And it leads into the conversation we're probably going to have, which is that when we first presented these graphs, we were actually showing quite rapid shifts into different states, which was a versatility Kevin and I found really pretty easy, that we could shift into one state, then shift into another, then shift into another, and actually show clearly in graphs and brainwaves. That was actually what we were doing. And in different research I've been done independently with labs in Japan, that Kevin's done with labs in the US, they verified that we were equally able to do these separate of each other. And when we were comparing them, it was clear that we were able to show these shifts really pretty rapidly within, say, 60 seconds or very short periods of time. We could shift from one state to another. And that's quite intriguing when it comes to working with another meditator, because prior to Kevin, I'd never found somebody that could do, they'd tend to rest in one state for a long period of time, and that tended to be their signature. But Kevin was one of the few people I found who could rest in one state, and then if I said to him, "Oh, can you shift into this state?" and he'd go, "Oh yeah," and then it was very obvious he was present in another state. And then so shifting from like a very focused, high energized state, for example, into, say, a very awake state, a very state of being very deep into a state of awareness, or opening up into a limitless field. I knew from how Kevin described to me these different reference points, because they're not really locations, but when you're fumbling around for words in wordless states, you hit it on the same descriptions. So I was very aware that Kev and I were working through these various states, and that's the whole basis of the Raising Our Vibration Subtle Energy meditation course. And that then we were showing this in these graphs. So the thing that caused the community a little bit of consternation was they were going, what are you doing there? Well, what are you doing there? But how come, what are you doing there? Because we were rapidly shifting between these various states, unbeknownst to us at the time. That might not be the average person's experience. And so that was a really good insight for us too, was, be careful what you share, or don't presume that what you share is going to necessarily make sense to everybody.
Well, and these states, they're well described in many different traditions, but really only in the most esoteric parts of those traditions. So one of the things that we started talking about when we got together was the commonalities across traditions, and how each tradition had their own way of doing this state, and then their own way of doing that state, and talked about how these states affect our consciousness and the way we interact with others and relate to ourselves and the world. We really, our mission is to take that commonality out of the different religious and traditional contexts so that it's available, just as Stephen said, as tools for training consciousness for all human beings. So you don't have to be embedded within a specific tradition or believe a certain set of beliefs to have these shifts in state and have this change in consciousness that is described in all these different traditions, but which really is just natural to this body, heart, mind system that we all share. That's, I think, what's unique in our approach is that we are providing a really experientially based practice that is really just based on basic inner skills that are innate to this body, heart, mind system that we all share and that we all have.
Thank you both so much for sharing your journey. There is so much to pick out from that conversation. I want to start first by saying that you both are the most in sync people I've ever come across. From the story that you shared to the way that you guys come across. It's amazing how this whole story, you guys have never met physically, yet you guys are so in sync and have worked together for how many years now?
Yeah, let's see, since fall of 2008, so 3 years now.
Yeah, 3 years.
And once we met, we've been doing it every week since. So yeah. It was just like we'd been doing it forever and we're just picking up again.
That's incredible. It's like how you both were living these parallel lives, progressing on the same path. And then the intersection came, and now you guys have compounded this creative effort together to make this impact called Raising Our Vibrations. It's incredible.
It is pretty, just speaking to that, because I was just in a meeting with a very well-known entrepreneur who has a really significant company that he's built up over a number of years. And he was talking about exactly this, how difficult it is to get absolutely in sync with one other person. And so while he was talking to us about this and how this is one of his life missions, is to find out how to get those two people in sync. I was thinking, Kev and I have a really practical example of that, and of the fact, I sometimes wonder whether Kev and I have been twins in a past life, because there are those studies of twins that show how their brains and their habits correlate. And it was rather uncanny to meet up with somebody and so seamlessly just almost flow into something that seemed, as Kevin was saying, this natural propensity we all have. So all of you listening have this incredible, natural, effortless brain signature, soul signature. Kevin and I tapped into a synchrony. I've often thought about that. Even the fact that our brainwaves show this pattern was probably radiating some kind of, on some universal level, was resonating coherently with the cosmos to open all these doors to us to say, because anywhere along the way, we could have easily said, I'd prefer to go down this track with the meditation, or I'd actually like to go this way with the book, or actually I'd rather have my own app. but it was never like that, not even for an instant. It just was so obvious. So I've often wondered about those initial brainwave graphs. Maybe we weren't supposed to share them with the community. Maybe they were just designed for each other to say, hey, don't miss, they're so in sync that isn't it obvious what you're being shown to do together. So yeah, I think that the power of not just one, but two. Those classic comments from the Bible and many other wisdom books, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I'll be. It was really an example of that kind of power, because it was really very powerful. It's like, wow, you mean it's like you talk to God or source or the universe. Oh, you mean it can be this easy? So it's been like that ever since. It was like just this really easy flow. And I think that's, if there's one thing that people, that any of you listening can take from this, it's to look for those kind of connections you can make with people that are really in sync and coherent, where you really feel the other person's heartbeat. Because that's what I feel like with Kevin. It's been just so seamless. So it's undeniably possibly like I call them a Chintamani stone experience, where a wish-fulfilling jewel comes along in your life. So that's Kevin. And we vibrate at a similar kind of resonance. When you look at, say, Heart Math Institute and lots of other groups that are looking to heart resonance and heart coherence, you realize, of course, our hearts have probably been so coherent without us even needing to think about it, that it's just naturally, because you know how big the magnetic field of the heart is, that our combined hearts just naturally sort of opened these channels and just made it seemingly effortless for us to connect in with communities of people, and then more people, and then keep opening and more. And because it never seemed like we were trying to actually do anything. So in that sense, it became natural and effortless, just like our practice. So I think there's a lot to be said for, if you're listening to this and you're a beginning meditator, look for the practice that's beginning, that helps you to be natural and effortless. And then equally look for teachers that give you that feeling that it is natural and effortless. And then look for partners and friends where the friendships are natural and effortless. And then it sort of goes on from there.
I think that synchrony is something that we've really seen in our groups as well, Stephen. In the classes, it's amazing that after a very short time in our 10-week course, the whole group is starting to resonate in the same frequency and share the most interior experiences, but in a way that's just effortless and natural. And there's this group synchrony that starts to happen over the course of the 10 weeks of the course that's really been remarkable to participate in and to see again and again.
Yeah, I agree. And Kevin, excuse us, because we do speak like this. Kevin says something, and I think, because that beautiful, natural and effortless place, I actually do believe as humanity. So we look at the pandemic that's present at the moment. What does everybody want? They want a space of great peace, right? They want to feel like they can come to a stop, just rest, find peace in a natural and effortless way. And as Kevin said, that's what we found with the groups. There's often quite a lot of trauma and pain and challenge and obstacles that are expressed. So we have that as part of the course, the unfolding of what are naturally obstacles in your life, and could that perhaps be reframed so that they become your biggest liberating factor, so that the greatest tensions in your life are actually pointing to the greatest freedom. And good examples of that will be where somebody really has a challenge with, they've got a restless mind and it makes them very anxious. So it actually points them towards meditation as being a possible tool, for helping that anxiety. So the very tension that they've got has actually brought them there. And then when they realize that there are very simple ways, which we talk about in our process, all the way from preparing to focus into concentration, into absorption, into a transcendent state that many people describe, and then being able to reflect on it afterwards. Once you start to reflect, which I think is an incredibly important part of any meditation process, you start to really recognize that this has been with you all along, that there's been times in your life when it's been absolutely peaceful, and the anxiety is really a pointer towards the changeless, the unnameable, the infinite opportunity within us all to actually be in that space of peace and naturally and effortlessly 24/7. I think it's such a great reminder. And when you're in anxiety, of course, it's tough, right? Because you seem to have anxiety 24/7. And then when you start to see glimpses of how it's possible not to be in anxiety through a simple series of steps. And a lot of the time I find that for Kevin and I, it's about pointing people back to those really basic things: planting your feet on the floor, feeling connected with the planet, feeling softness in your hands, feeling clarity as you sit up. Because it's quite curious. If you're listening to us now and you don't look at the screen for a moment, something changes, right? The mere fact that you shift your awareness, instead of on a particular point of focus, that you shift your awareness to the space in your room, something happens. You instantly shift a level of your consciousness. And you could even say you've gone from a sort of one-pointed focusing on what I'm saying to, oh, right, there's a space in my room that I hadn't considered because I've been so focused on this point. And that's a bit like anxiety. You can be so focused on anxiety, you forget the space in the cosmos, right? So these really simple, same with Kevin often used to speak to me about the space and softness and this felt sense in your hands. And when you think about it, it's such a good measure, because quite often we're not focused in our hands. We're quite often here. So people who have anxiety, for example, are quite often so busy in their head. So when you say, can you feel into your hands? The answer might be no in the beginning. But if you say, okay, can you feel the anxiety in your head? Can you drop it into your throat? Even if you have to put, oh, okay, yeah, I can feel it. Okay, can you put your hands on your heart? Feel it. Oh, yeah, I can feel it. All right. Can you now put your feeling into your hands? Oh, yeah. And then instantly that, for just a few moments, there's suddenly awareness of energy and softness in the hands, which is quite different to the feeling of anxiety. And people feel that shift. So that movement inwards, that interoception, has been a hallmark or a standard of, or a pointer in our courses from the very beginning. I think Kevin and I were really present to the fact that this is truly an inside job, that stress, that the stresses are also inside. And so we're working towards actually being aware of how we negotiate and speak and chatter and connect inside. Because when you look outside and you see all the things in our world, you believe it. You're so strongly drawn out there to your television, to your phone, to people's opinions, to the news, to the objects, right? Everything is telling you that it's out there, right? Just literally everything. And yet, when you stop and pause and settle into this energy in your hands, you suddenly realize that when you pause and take a calm breath, in fact, everything can be governed from this inwardness, from what we call interoception or turning inwards. And that there's an entirely different place that you operate from when you operate from this space of, great peace and calmness. Suddenly you realize, oh, right, I'm moving from inside myself. It's such an aha. Instead of being dragged outwards by reaching for your phone first thing in the morning, instead of doing that, you keep your eyes closed and you just take a breath of calm, happiness first thing in the morning. And then you can have such a powerful recognition at that very first moment of your morning that, in fact, the whole of your day starts from there. And in fact, every moment can be lived from there once you recognize it.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for this beautiful interoception piece. You not only shared the process, but also the journey, the experiential journey as well. And I think that's what I also love so much about the ROV practice. Going back to what Kevin was saying before, it's that you take these commonalities between all these modalities and practices that you've been through, and you turn them into these experiential tools that people can take with them, and without the too much of the spiritual side, or sorry, I should say religious side, for them to take on, so they can easily digest and take them on as simply consciousness or themselves. And I wanted to quickly, for the audience, in this conversation, as you've heard everyone, they both have been speaking about a lot about brainwaves and graphs, and you might be thinking, what are we talking about here? And to set the context, what it is, an example that they were using could be a Muse headband, where it's simply a device you put over your forehead, it connects around the ears, and it has a couple of nodes that detect. It's basically an EEG device that detects these brainwaves. It records the data, it sends through to certain apps that you can measure or interpret through Mind Monitor, which they've mentioned, to produce all these graphs that they can detect what levels of delta or gamma or alpha or beta that they have. And these are the types of graphs and data that they're comparing with the community and among themselves. So I wanted to set that context so that you guys didn't get too lost in that. Also, to touch on the similarities and in sync between you both, there was a recent study released about narrative and how if they go through the same narrative, they become physiologically in sync quite a lot. And I do think that's part of the journey for you both as well, because not only are your narratives similar, but the things that you've learned and studied are very similar. The narrative of writing your books in the same area is similar. And then the narrative of building something together on a mission is very similar. And I feel like it'll be only natural that both your physiological and spiritual sense would become even more in sync as well. And to switch gears a little bit, I was doing some research on both Kevin and Stephen, and I wanted to start with you, Kevin, with the date, with the year of 1985. It seems like it was a special year for you. Would you be able to share a bit about your experience in 1985?
Yeah. So are you talking about my experience in the desert when I took a trip?
Yes, that one.
That experience? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. It was the mid 80s, and I had just graduated with a philosophy degree from St. Joseph's University, and I was looking to have some kind of big experience before I went into graduate school in philosophy in the fall. And I got this idea to come out west in the United States. I'd been on the East Coast almost my whole life, been a real city person, hadn't been a real outdoors person or backpacker or anything. So I said, oh, I'm going to do that. For a month, I'm going to backpack through all these phenomenal wilderness areas in Colorado, Utah, Arizona. So I went through areas of the Rocky Mountains and the Grand Canyon and Moab and Canyonlands and Arches in Utah. And anyway, on this backpacking trip, so this was the 80s. So we didn't have any smartphones, or if you were out backpacking, you had no connection with the world, the human world. And that was really different for me. And at first, a really scary experience for me, because it seemed like nothing was happening out here. So I was used to the city and activity and doing things all the time, and entertainment and sports and working out, just all these social activities and school activities and work. And so being out in the wilderness was really an eye-opener for me, literally. And first, I went to the Canyonlands in Utah, which is, if people haven't seen it before, actually, I can put up a graphic of it to add to my story. Okay, this is the Canyonlands in Utah. And if I could imagine being on the moon or being just in a completely foreign landscape, I spent a lot of time just hiking through this landscape. And at first it was really eerie to me. It seemed like it was really dry and barren, and I couldn't see any life in it. But I felt like there was something for me here. And I spent a lot of time just sitting and looking out at this landscape and looking out at the sky. And there were three qualities of the landscape that really started to work on me. And at first, like I said, there are three qualities that kind of scared me, but as I got used to them and acclimated to them, they brought me a deep sense, really deep sense of, and a natural sense of inner peace. And they were the stillness. It seemed like it was completely still out here. And the silence, except for the sound of the gentle breeze, there were no other sounds. And then the vast space of the landscape. And as I just sat there and just took that in, the stillness and the silence and the spaciousness of the landscape started to take over my inner landscape, so that I felt my body was completely still, my emotions, my mind was completely quiet and silent. There was no inner dialogue. There were no words in my head. And there was a vast sense of spaciousness that I felt as if, as I was sitting there, and I did that with my eyes open and my eyes closed, and I felt like I was just a part of this boundless spaciousness. And at the end of the month, I can remember just feeling all I can say is it was a transcendent experience, that I was as if I was this whole vast space itself, that the inside of me and the outside of me there was no division, and there was just this vast space of consciousness, of awareness, this vast open landscape. Now, as I was flying home on the plane, I can remember not only feeling that deep peace, but I also had this deep knowing that if I died right now, there would be no difference in being alive or having died, that there was just this, whatever it was that I was experiencing was eternal. And it was boundless and eternal and ever present. And I came back wanting to know more about that. So it was nothing, I'd never experienced anything like that before. So I came back from that experience. And first I had learned that something like that was possible, but I didn't know how to describe it or what to call it. I hadn't had experiences meditating before. And so I came back from that trip and I was like, oh, I want to find out what this is. And I want to see if I can practice this so that whatever this is, whatever you call it, that becomes my new state of being. And so I came back to the city, and that was the shock now, as I had acclimated to this other way of being, this other state of consciousness. And so now the city seemed crazy to me. It was really like two different worlds. But something in me told me that this is going to be a process where you learn that there's no difference between being in the city or being in nature, between being an individual self, between being all of consciousness. There's something there. And so that really got me seriously studying Tai Chi and then Qigong and Kriya, centering prayer, Reiki. I completed a master's degree in phenomenology, which is study of states of consciousness and how we come to experience things the way that we do. Because most people think that, well, there's the world out there and I'm just looking at it and seeing it as it is. And what I came to learn was that there are an infinite number of possible events happening simultaneously at the same time. And what I experience is completely a matter of what I'm focused on and how I'm relating to that. It's not that I ever see what is, but I'm just seeing what I'm focusing on and how I'm relating to it. And that's giving me my experience. Yeah, so that started me on this discovery process of, okay, how does that become my 24/7 state of consciousness? How does that happen? And through all these practices, I learned that you can take some time every day. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but you can learn to connect with that consciousness, that consciousness is always present. It's always underneath everything. It is the source of everything. And that if you take a little time each day to tune into that level of being, which is this vast, open, boundless stillness, silence, and spaciousness, that can become the reference point that you live your life from. And over the last 36 years of practicing, that has become just the way that I experience the world now. And when I met Stephen, that was exactly how he experiences the world. And he's some of the language or the orientation might be different, but that underlying sense of this vast, boundless awareness that is who we are was something that we immediately connected on and want to share with and point others toward.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that beautiful journey and story. I am looking at the vast canyon image that you share behind you. And the mere thought of being alone with a zero connection to the outside world in a space that large, that vast, it would be so polarizing at the beginning. And the feeling of becoming so small in something so big, I would definitely be feeling afraid at the beginning, some sort of fear.
It was very uncomfortable at first, for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. And especially since I'd never been in an environment like that. But it was essential to be in that environment at that moment. It just opened up something, and it opened up something that we all know underneath. It's something that we all know this. It's who we are. We all know it. And it's just a matter of being open to it and allowing it to come forward so that instead of being deep in the background, it's actually completely in the foreground all the time.
And I love that when you came back to the city, although it was polarizing, you still wanted to bring that experience here with you right there, right now. And it's trying to understand that there is no difference between whether you're there in the city or whether you're back there in the canyons. And it reminded me of this quote by, I think it was John Kabat-Zinn, and I might be paraphrasing it, but it was along the lines of, wherever you are, there you are, essentially. And it's actually, personally, I find that quite a challenge for a lot of people as well, navigating the inner peace, quietness with the noisy world that we live in. And one of my mentors, Pauline Wynn, talks about spiritual entrepreneurship. And you both are living in this world and both running ROV business ideas, students. You still have to deal with the day-to-day, yet you both are able to still withhold these strong practices and keep your center very still. And I would like to hear more about it from your perspective in navigating that hectic world that we live in with a spiritual practice or with a meditation practice. And how does that merge together? Anyone can take the floor here, whoever likes to take it first.
Stephen, you want to, since I've been talking for a while, and I'll follow you.
Okay. I know John Kabat-Zinn. I did his courses some while ago, and so the wherever you are, there you are is very accurate. It's a good way of describing it, because And as Kevin said also, Kevin, as the first Kevin, as my meditation partner, Kevin said, that there's this vast boundless awareness that you always are. So people often consider you going through your daily life, and let's say you live in a hectic office and your colleagues are concerned about the pandemic, and people are having reactions to vaccinated or unvaccinated people, and people are reacting to the governments, and people are reacting to this mandate or this order or this law. And so I'm present to quite a number of examples of that, because even though I'm in Japan, I'm in touch with a lot of people from New Zealand and Australia. So I'm trying to think of some really good examples that people could relate to. So here you are, maybe your work environment has changed. You're still required to come to work. You've been required to get the jab. Some of your family agrees with it. Some of your family doesn't. So there's a little bit of pull and tension there. You might see the government making different decisions. There's a pull and tension there. Some of your friends who haven't been vaccinated are being told they can't do this and they can't do that. So there's a pull and a tension there. So there's all these pulls and tensions, and you are wondering how to deal with that. And you hear Kevin L, I'll say, Kevin Lee on the one hand saying, oh, it's just about wherever you are, there you are. And you hear Kevin Schoeninger on the other hand saying, oh, you're just this vast, boundless awareness. So you can't make the fit. You can't plug one into another, because your world of being pulled and pushed seems to be so foreign to vast, boundless awareness. So what Kevin and I always advise in the simplest way is, first thing is the moment you wake. So you have an opportunity the moment you wake up, because you're not in your hectic office, you're not anywhere else, you're actually just with yourself. You're lying in bed, about to get up. And what tends to happen for many of us is there's an alarm that goes off, and you'd much rather it was Sunday morning and you could sleep in a little bit more, or in my case, my 7-year-old might come and jump on me. But you're just wishing it would be a Sunday morning, right? You're wishing there'd be a little bit more peace and space in your life. So one thing that Kevin and I often recommend in really practical purposes, is why not even consider getting up even just 5 minutes earlier, right, than you might normally do. Now, what that does is not only does it break a habit, because generally your body's tuned into a particular type of pattern, but what it does, it just gives you 5 minutes where in fact you could just lie there. So you could set your own thing in really practical terms. Put your alarm 5 minutes earlier and have two alarms. One's your wake up and be present alarm, and the other is your actual wake up alarm. So you wake up, the first alarm goes off 5 minutes earlier, and it gives you an opportunity just to rest with, say, a conscious breath of calm happiness or a conscious breath of peace. And so you can do it now, right? I can let you know what that breath might be like if you don't really know, but you're lying in bed. So this is the wake up moment. You don't need to sit up. You could just do it lying in bed. And so you take your sensations inwards, and sometimes a really simple way of doing this is actually placing your hands on your belly, because what that does is it takes your awareness out of your head, because your alarm goes off and the first thing is, that alarm. And instead of this, you pause your alarm, because that's going to go off in 5 more minutes, and you take your awareness down to your belly, you put your hands on your belly, and you just begin to breathe calmly. You breathe in a breath of calm. You can even say to yourself, calm. As you breathe in, make it quite a long exhalation. Let's say count it for 6. So you count in for a count of 6, just in your own time. And then as you breathe out, happiness. You just think of happiness saturating every cell in your body. And you breathe out a little bit longer, even for a count of like 8. And what the long exhalation does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It activates the vagus nerve. So you're just doing this beautiful, simple breathing technique. Breathing in for a count of 6, 2, 3. And it's calm. You're even saying to yourself, calm, calm, calm. And as you breathe out, this happiness and peace. So you just think happy, peace. Something about that word peace too, just peace. Right, for a count of 8. So you can already feel this long exhalation is helping you to slow down. And you do it again. You maybe just take 3 breaths. Fill yourself with calmness on the inward breath. So your eyes are still closed. Right? Breathing in for that count of 6. With your hands on your belly. Things feel so easeful and effortless and natural and peaceful. Then you breathe out again for your count of 8. This long exhalation of happiness and peace. You can feel right this moment, you can feel down in your belly and in your body. Everything's just at peace. So now, while you're still lying in bed, you open your eyes really slowly. So as you open your eyes really slowly, you just stay within, stay with your awareness down in your belly. It's quite useful to consider being aware of that way. And you just keep breathing, and just with this feeling of calm as you breathe in, happiness as you breathe out. And you just check in with your body. Right? So you can do all this in these 5 minutes so simply. Just checking with your body, many sensations that are present. Sometimes we've got aches, aches from working over a computer for a long period of time. You might just notice certain aches. Maybe there's a tension you customarily get in the mornings, but instead of reacting to it now, you just allow it, you just welcome it. You could even say it, you could even label it. Quite a useful thing. Just say, oh, welcome tension between my shoulders. It's something funny if you welcome the tension between your shoulders and not used to it. It lightens it a little, kind of gives it some space. Right, so you've got your eyes open now. Now you can you can drop your hands. You might feel a lot of energy in your belly right now. You might feel energy in your hands. So you might feel this interoception is a little bit more sticky inside your body, right? There's a felt sense of this calm, happiness and peace, kind of smiling in every cell. You might give a little smile just as you sit up on the bed. So when you smile, smiling does something really beautiful, right? It activates lots of nerves that tell you that this is a good thing that's happening, right? There's a sense of heart coherence. So the heart has a mighty big field, right? It extends out much further than you think, some meters from the body. So when you start to smile, a smile of calm happiness, then your heart field starts to extend. So you're, in a very real way, you're actually embodying within and without. Now there's no difference, right? What Kevin was saying, there's no difference between the vastness within and the vastness without. So now you're actually doing this with your eyes open, just breathing calmly, coherent, very aware that there's this beautiful field of your heart extending from inside to outside with no difference. There's a sense of this calm happiness in your breath and your heart. This is why keeping your awareness down in your gut or in your heart is quite helpful. So you're sitting on the side of the bed, just breathing like that. And the second alarm is about to go off. And that's all okay. Because this time when the alarm goes off, you don't reach for it in this kind of half asleep manner. You reach for it with awareness, with this calm, happy awareness. So now the alarm goes off, just quietly and gently press whatever it is, your mobile, your clock, or whatever you've got it set up. But you do it from the space. So this is a lovely test, right? The second alarm is a beautiful test of this inner space of vastness, as Kevin was speaking about. And now the vastness, this calm happiness. If you turn inwards for a moment, if you see where the limits are to calm happiness, I bet you can't find them. They're unfindable, right? Calmness. You don't say, oh, calmness stops out here somewhere. Right? It hasn't got any edge or boundary. Same with happiness, right? If you think to a time you're happy, and you might want to do that now, you might want to remember a time, perhaps in your childhood or your teenage years, or just sometime when you're really carefree, and just like Kevin was in the desert, when things were really big and natural and effortless. When you think of those times, that time of maybe happiness or calmness, or when there's lots of space. Often it's just when you're playing out in nature, a little bit like what Kevin was doing in the desert experience. He was, in a sense, he was playing in nature. His inner child really was one with that nature. And you can actually visualize that. You can sense into this inner child in you, this child that knows the natural free space. So if you look for any limits to that, your happiness in that moment or your calmness, there's no edge, there's no boundaries. It's a direct experience of what Kevin was talking about, this vastness that we're never, ever separate from. You can go that, I guarantee you, if for example, it was like you were riding on a tricycle around your lawn or something like that, or splashing in the waves on a beach, guarantee you can go to that again and again. If you're there now, brighten it, right? Make it bigger. You can do this with your senses. You can actually sensualize experience so that it becomes incredibly real. Bet you can make it bigger, make the sound stronger. Some people see, that's okay. If you can see it, make it brighter. Some people just sense it, that's okay. Make the senses stronger. Some you can smell maybe, whatever it was like there, or even taste it. So again, you've got this whole inner sense, right? And when you have that brightness and that clarity in your vision or in your senses, again, see if there's any limit. But you can't find it. There's no limits to this brightness or this happiness or this calmness. It's just when there's happiness, right? There's happiness. You think of a time you fell in love or you did something you really loved. It seems like there's no time. Like it's timeless for a time. Timelessness. So there's no sense of these edges or boundaries. So that's what, when Kevin talks about having a real experience of this effortless natural vastness, that's exactly what he's talking about. The sense of calm happiness where there's no edges, sense of that inner turning inwards towards to that deep happiness or peace where there's no boundary. So then you get up and you've got to get on your public transport, or you've got to go and drive to work, and then your day shapes in a different way. And you also start to do things that are more aligned with this space of calm happiness and peace. You start to realize, oh, okay, I used to listen to all the latest news and get really concerned about the pandemic when I'm on the train, but actually now I'm just going to listen to some of my favorite music, or I'm going to chill out over a really good book, so you start to actually make really small adjustments. I always call them baby steps. You just take little baby steps towards, and then at work, maybe you've set up your desk in a particular way, and it's got nothing to remind you of these beautiful moments of calm happiness. And maybe now you have a photograph, maybe you even put, like Kevin, you have a whole different, you bring your foreground into the present, right? So Kevin might have his photograph of the beautiful backdrop he's got here somewhere in his work environment, so that he's got a reminder. So every time he looks at that, you can pause. You can pause during your workday without people knowing that you're pausing, and you see the photo of this special place or this time that reminds you of calm happiness. You just pause, just take a conscious breath, just connect to that vastness again. You do it when you leave work, so you say goodbye to everybody, and as you're going to your car, instead of starting your car and driving straight out into heavy traffic, you just pause for just a moment, take a conscious breath, remind yourself of to bring the backdrop of, like Kevin's backdrop, to the foreground. You bring it consciously into awareness, and then you're present again. Then before you arrive at home, and whether it's public transport or a car or you're walking, that your walk becomes the time you bring this background to the foreground. Your car, you pause in the car outside your house before you go inside to greet your kids or your partner, or if you're living by yourself, to greet whatever you do in your day, that there's this pause where you just recognize that the background is actually the foreground, and you bring this vast awareness into your every moment. So there were some easy, simple practices that anybody can do. So if you're listening, you're tuned into that now, and you can do that at any time.
Thank you, Stephen, for sharing some very practical processes that people were able to follow and that they can refer back to. It's that process of constantly checking in and starting off the day right, with a process that they can control, they can take back control, rather than a reactive.
And exactly. And the same at night, you'd reverse it at night. So as you're going to sleep, you bring the same conscious awareness, as you're going to sleep. Beautiful.
Now, I wanted to switch gears again. I do seem to jump from topic to topic quite a bit, but please stick with me. With your whole operation, meeting remotely and then developing these programs and practices and classes that are pretty much all online, mainly, is that the case?
Yes.
And which is already quite different to what the usual practices are, where it's at temples or at shrines or at churches, or even just physical places that people gather in. And obviously that's, I wouldn't say it worked out quite well, but in the sense that it's streamlined according to COVID as well, where people can't really meet up and they're also having their own struggles and challenges, and you guys being able to connect with them remotely and help them. I wanted to inquire further about what do you think about the future of this meditation space with more apps coming to play and more people moving to the digital space. How do you see that unfolding, or just simply your opinion about the future of meditation in a digital space? Maybe Kevin can take that off first.
Okay. Yeah. First off, one thing that becomes really apparent when we're meeting with people all over the world digitally is that you have a palpable felt sense of the interconnection across space, right? That because you can really feel the heart connection in the group experience and in the group meditation experience. There's something that happens in the group experience, and people who are wearing those headsets and monitoring their physiological processes can really note that in a profound way and measure that. And so we really learn that we are connected no matter where we are, that there is just one life, that we all share one collective consciousness, that we are all expressions of. And when you're in Tokyo and Switzerland and Netherlands and Spain and Mexico and Canada and Australia and Japan, and all simultaneously, and feeling that connection in a real visceral felt sense, you start to understand in a whole new way our profound interconnection. And so that's one thing that actually the virtual space brings home, that we're used to feeling that when we're in a group in the same room. But when you can feel that same thing, and in a very profound way through this technology, and you start to understand that it's beyond the technology, it's just we're tapping into the connectedness that we already have and that we already are. And then the other thing about the app and the sharing of meditations by the app is these days we are very busy and very task oriented, and most people have a lot to do and feel like they have way more to do than time to do it in. And so having an app on this device that you carry with you everywhere you go anyway, and being able just to take a few moments, click an app, open a meditation, and we have meditations from 5 minutes to 60 minutes on the app. So any length of time that you have, you can just hit play, have a seat, close your eyes, and follow along and be guided in something. And the guided meditations we found are really powerful for people. in that a lot of people, if they just sit down and they're following their breath, and they'll find that they're very quickly just their mind is wandering. So the guided meditation it is something to follow. It's something to listen to and follow an internal series of cues. And it makes the whole process very easy. And so since meditation is something that a lot of people think of meditating and they think, oh, that's a hard thing to do, or I can't quiet my mind, or they have all sorts of ideas about meditation that interfere with them thinking they can do it or that it's for them. This really opens up meditation to people all over the world and within their own daily circumstances. They don't have to go to a church or a temple or a class or something. It's right here with you on a device you already have. All it takes is just sitting down for 5 minutes in your car or in your office or at home, and you can bring this right into very easily and very conveniently and effortlessly into your life and start to build a practice. So I think those are two things that the technology has really brought home. Is one is when we're in this virtual space and we feel this strong connection, we realize, oh, this connection is boundless. It's not bound by time or space. And then when you have a way to tap into this experience very conveniently and easily, and something that you can fit right into the moments of your life right when you need them, that makes it something readily available and applicable and easy to use. So those are two ways I see technology. And then the third one is this idea of measuring your state, right? So that's something that really draws people into the practice in a way that feels more concrete, because what's happening inside the body, heart, mind can feel, especially when you're not used to interoception, you're not used to paying attention inside, can feel nebulous and hard to get a handle on. And so when you have a technology that's saying, oh, look, my brain waves were doing this, and now they're doing this. And all I did was practice like Stephen just guided, where you just take a few moments and you tune into this breath of calm happiness and really feel the sensations of that. And you can see how it affects your brain or your heart rate. That really makes the process more real for a lot of people. And so those are three ways that really, I think that technology really opens up this whole field and this whole practice in ways that were never possible before.
Thank you, Kevin. Stephen, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, like Kevin, I'm really present to the interconnected power of technology. And I'm in a lot of groups these days who are researching a lot of technological applications. So I'm very familiar with them. I used to lecture in things like AI back in the 2000s in university. So I did a number of guest speaking slots for this, and people get a bit scared of new technology. Oh, what happens if I put this headset on, or what's this going to do to me, and so on and so forth. But what Kevin pointed out is really pointing to the power of our interconnectedness. And in fact, when you look at, say, some of the new technologies that are already present, like Web 3.0, that's talking to our power, the autonomous power we have as an individual to actually control our data, for example. Like for far too long, companies like Google and Facebook and so on have been running the show, and Web 3.0 flips all that on its head, where you're the one who actually has control of the data. And this, especially, I know for artists, musicians, meditators, Kevin and myself, when we're putting out things there into the public, that Web 3.0 speaks to the power of our interconnectivity, but also the power of us to act autonomously as individuals. So it gives the power back to the people, so to speak. And in fact, AI I prefer to call it, rather than artificial intelligence, I prefer to call it awake intelligence, because again, it's only as good as us, right? In the hands of the right programming, it works with wisdom It works with understanding, it works with compassion, it works with care. There have been a number of well-known people, including the Dalai Lama, who was asked at a youth conference a couple of years ago about AI. And he said the same thing, that in the hands of the right people, it is actually a great knowledge. So what it helps us to do, just as Kevin was talking about the power of brainwaves to actually inform us, is properly used, what I'll call awakened intelligence programming, actually helps us to understand that our brainwave states are unique. And it helps us, instead of telling us, you should be buying this on Amazon, what it actually does in the right context is it says, oh, look at what your brainwaves are helping inform you. Here's a greater wisdom potential for what's happening during your day. So it actually looks more at longitudinal approaches to life, and how you can be more in flow, and how you can be more interoceptive, and how you can be more mindful. So I think that that is especially potent. The power of all these technologies like blockchain technologies and NFTs and so on, they're all speaking to, again, the fact that people would much rather have their own observations and definitions and understandings about their brains and their hearts and their guts and their meditative states than have somebody else say, this is who you should be, or this is how you should operate. So all of those technologies speaking to the same kind of interconnectedness, that we want to interconnect with trust, that we want to interconnect with love, that we want to interconnect with wisdom. So all of the new technologies are starting to head in that direction. They're speaking to a whole different form of technology. Somebody once spoke about, I think it was one of the head of a digital research group, spoke about the real power of the future of technology is grace, that it is actually a technology of love and kindness, that it's no longer a technology of manipulation, right? Because there's no doubt that we've passed through phases of technology quite recently where there's been a lot of consternation around the way a lot of the bigger corporations have used what is actually our own personal data. And this goes all the way from large internet groups all the way up to governments. So there is that constant, and you can see it with people in how they're having to act now through this pandemic, is when different governments all over the world are having different stands on the way that their citizens should operate. And it's clear it's not working that well. So it is speaking again to that, what we've been talking about, interconnectedness, trusting each other, bringing greater love and kindness to situations. That's where all our technology is heading, is into that level of technology. You'd want to think that's our baseline, but actually a lot of technology has been used for everything other than that purpose. So when we get a baseline of that running right throughout a planet, then we'll realize that the planet itself, in terms of climate change, has been pointing us towards greater trust of the planet and its resources, greater love and care and kindness of the planet. And it's the same principles. If we apply it right across the board, then technology falls into where it naturally should. People often see it as something outside ourselves, but it's a little like what Kevin's talked about, this vastness where everything's within it, is that we are technology. We're the ones that are creating it. Therefore, there is a great responsibility on us to create it with trust and love and kindness and care, and really looking after the individual of this planet, looking after every single country, and bringing that degree of kindness right across every country to every person. That's what true technology can actually do. And I think in that sense, then it becomes just what we're speaking about today. It becomes vast and boundless technology. It becomes the technology of unconditional love. Now we've got a little way to go towards that, but with the right, in the hands and hearts of the right people, it becomes something that truly does connect us, which is, I think, going back to Kevin's point of, that's what we've discovered with our groups. And that's what all of us want the technology to do, right? We want it to give us more health, happiness, calmness, peace, and connectedness right across the globe.
Thank you for sharing them both, Kevin and Stephen. I wanted to touch on 2 points quickly. One of the points that Kevin mentioned earlier was about how technology analyzing data for and sharing it back with the people and then people finding that useful. And I think that is a very tangible thing for a lot of people because meditation is such a strong interoception practice. A lot of beginners aren't sure about, are they doing this correctly? Or what am I supposed to be experiencing? Or where is this as a baseline for me? What measurement, where am I working towards? And as you've mentioned with the technologies that they're creating very simply for people to be able to measure some sort of baseline or some sort of a measurement so that they can continually progress or at least find out where they are or find out, okay, if I do this, then what will happen there? And I love that piece. And I think more and more people should come on board and understand and learn more about that space. And secondly, I wanted to ask you, Stephen, a little bit more about your perspective of Web 3.0 and NFTs in the meditation space. What sort of, if you have anything that comes up to mind, what sort of utility / experience do you see the whole Web 3.0 blockchain NFT space coming into the meditation, or meditation going into that space? What would it look like, say, fast forward 3 to 5 years, for example, when that comes more to the mainstream?
So the question of Web 3.0 and NFTs is going back to you have a digital wallet, you are able to then create. Like one of the big powers of Web 3.0 is the power for creativity. I know a lot of people also use it as a marketplace. You can go to a marketplace like OpenSea and you can buy and sell NFTs. That exists naturally, much like Amazon's marketplace, right? But the real power comes into this power of creativity that in fact you can give back into the hands of people and hearts really of people all over the world, the opportunity for them to own all their space, to actually be able to govern and be autonomous and self-governance. It's truly the opportunity to reach back and encourage. So in this case, for Kevin and I, if I was to look at it very practically, is that we have a lot of meditation teachers that are starting to develop and find their wings and fly and explore their own, avenues. And if you can, of course, create a digital asset around art and music, as you do on Web 3.0 and NFTs, you can equally do that in the meditation space with creating guidance, with creating opportunities for people to access that through your own so you're in that sense, you become, as a meditation teacher, you open totally to the fact that you are also not separate from Insight Timer, for example, that you can both be on Insight Timer, but equally you can establish your own autonomous creative space, and you can be in charge of that. Because most teachers know, if they go through a place like Insight Timer, which I think is a very good space, but it also governs how you do that. It has its own set of rules, its own way of paying you, its own way of revenue being processed, and so on and so forth. Whereas Web 3.0 turns that on its head, and it says actually you, Kevin, or anybody listening, is Insight Timer. You are that same, you can create a community around yourself in the same way, and it gives you the opportunity to do that in both an interconnected and a secure way. Now, granted, like anything else, it's like any community that is going to have its own set of challenges in arriving at that. So I have no doubt it's going to go through its upheavals and so on, and rules and regulations. And not to mention, I've always had concerns about the power that cryptocurrencies draw in terms of environmentally. That's always been a challenge. But given the right hearts, and given it at its foundation, this trust and love, given the right hearts, people will find a way. It's the same with climate change. Given the right hearts to run our governments, God bless them all, given the right hearts, they will find a way of doing that. Of course, there are some governments that may choose not to do that. That's totally going to be, unfortunately, to their undoing. But where the right hearts are concerned, and that's the same with Web 3.0 and NFTs, that the people that are involved in the creative part of the process will really work on what I think it's been trying to do right from the beginning, which is to engender this trust, and exactly what Kevin was speaking to, empower the interconnectivity of us, because that's really what it does. It empowers you to be in charge of, your own digital wallet, your own NFTs, your own meditation space, your own teaching space, your own community, and so on. So I think it really liberates that kind of purpose for people. And again, I think the focus, because I've been working in this space with a number of different companies and people, again, it comes back to really at heart, I consider it a bit like the ancient wisdom practices of dedicating your practice always to somebody else. In this interview, all the time when I'm sharing, I'm always thinking about the person that's listening, and I dedicate any blessings to you who are listening. And it's the same with the NFT space and Web 3.0. If we bring the same kind of manipulative or selfish purposes, and we just want to make money and that's all we care about, guess what? You're going to just recreate from the old level of consciousness. But if we actually bring a whole different level of consciousness, which is about the sense of dedication to other human beings, that we're actually doing it with the whole purpose of wanting to invest and support others, then a whole different paradigm opens up. So one of the communities I'm in is expressly devoted to what's at the heart of our raising our vibration, that we're really here for every person that's on our course. Like Kevin and I do that so that people can liberate themselves, so that they can feel that sense of calm happiness as a genuine moment-to-moment experience through their day. So if you extrapolate that onto Web 3.0 or any other group, if the group is really acting for the benefit of the others in the group, and everybody does that, then naturally everybody benefits, right? You benefit from each other. You benefit also from all the successes and beauties of each other. And you also benefit from the obstacles, because you start to recognize everybody's joy and happiness and calmness is yours, and everybody's obstacle is yours too. So there's never a place you won't go without that knowing. Like with Kevin, it doesn't matter what he faces in his life, he knows he's got my 100% or plus support, and because there's this deep level of trust and this deep level of love. And that's the quality that any new technology like Web 3.0 or NFTs need, right? Because there'll be, beyond Web 3.0, there'll be other Web 4.0, 10.0. Beyond NFTs, there will be AFTs and ZZTs. There's always something. Humanity is fabulous at creating like that. And so long as the foundation is there of interconnectedness and trust and love, then, and that you're doing it, you're actually literally aware every moment that you're dedicating. It's almost like you see God in every, so you actually literally dedicate. You're not just thinking, okay, I need all this for myself, but you're literally thinking, oh, here's an opportunity to establish a community now, which I can help, and I can help dedicate towards all those others in my community. That way, our world is looking very bright.
Thank you, Stephen, for your perspective and opinion in that space. It's a space that I'm closely looking at, and I'm sure you are as well. And it's great to hear another person's thoughts on that. And as I thought, we are running out of time before we ran out of questions. And so this would have to call for a part 2. And I hope that maybe you guys will come back for it. Thank you, Kevin. And I'll quickly wrap up with 3 quick questions. Now, quick fire. Could you guys recommend one favorite book of yours, starting with Kevin?
My current favorite book of ours is the one that Stephen and I wrote recently, which is Raising Our Vibration, A Guide to Subtle Energy Meditation. So
great.
That would be my current choice.
Thank you, Kevin. Stephen, do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend?
I even though you said our favorite book, I'll recommend two. One is obviously Kevin's book that he wrote, Clear Quiet Mind, which is really, it's so beautiful and simple. I would recommend it to everybody. And the other one that I'll recommend, because I read as a very young boy, around 6 or 7, I read Lord of the Rings. And there's a moment in there that's often quoted, where Gandalf says something like, "It doesn't matter. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry. All that matters is this moment and what you do." I'm paraphrasing what he said, but I actually think that wherever you go, there you are. Or I think Gandalf in that moment, and I remember reading that at the time when I was just a little kid, and I thought, oh, there's that other moment where he says, "You shall not pass," which is, which I also love quite deeply. But there were a few moments in reading that book as a young kid that I just was sparked to the presence of this beautiful power of unstoppable, immovable wonder of being a human being. Because I never quite Gandalf was a wizard. I thought there was an awful lot of humanity in them. So that whole process of the Lord of the Rings, it's a little bit like what Kevin and I have been through. We've had that same beautiful evolution of trials and obstacles in our life, as well as joys and successes where the eagles fly us home in the end. So it's like a little bit like that. You go right to and that's one of the wonders of life, right? Is that you go to all levels of life to actually bring back this richness and this beauty. So it might sound to all of you who are listening that, oh, Kevin, it's okay for Kevin and you because you've lived these seamless, pure, free lives. But in fact, like you, we've had lots of different obstacles to work through, which is, I think, why when you come to our course, that you feel so at home, because you realize we're dealing with life on exactly the same level, but just like you, we've got families, we've had jobs, we've been through health issues, you name it, we've worked with them just like you. So that's why I'm also quoting Lord of the Rings, because I do think that being present to what the opportunities of every single moment,
thank you, Stephen.
That's pretty precious.
And there's unseen magic in every moment. So I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
I carved this Gandalf when I was a little tyke.
There you go.
Sitting here, and here's another one.
Yes.
So I think we'll end with that bit of magic, because really when we tune in and we start to connect with this subtle energy within us, this life force that is within us and all around us, it is magical. It brings the magic back to life. It makes life feel, wow, this is something special. This is something not to be missed. And how was I missing this all along?
Thank you. And finally, guys, I just wanted to find out, how can people reach out or learn more about you both?
Yeah, so for Stephen and I, with Raising Our Vibration, our website is raisingourvibration.net. And there we have a new 10-week subtle energy meditation course starting in January. So we'd love to have you join us for that. And registration is on our webpage. You can also find information on our book, Raising Our Vibration, on our ROV meditation app, and on our mini course, which is called The Inner Secret. So raisingourvibration.net. And there's also a link there to our Facebook community.
And we have a YouTube channel as well. And as Kevin and I were explaining, there is not just the course, there's the Inner Secret digital course, which is available on Udemy. So you can actually type in, I think, The Inner Secret, and then just put UDEMY after it, and it'll come up. And also teacher training courses. If you're interested, after you've gone through the subtle energy meditation course, if you're interested in becoming a teacher, that's also a very present opportunity, and a really wonderful one. Quite a number of teachers have taken up that opportunity already.
Great. I'll make sure to put all of those links in the show notes for everyone to access. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to be in the presence of both of you. Thank you for your wisdom. I do not have words to share how grateful and thankful I am for your time. I really do hope that we can do a part 2. I still have many more questions I'd like to ask, and maybe we can do that in the new year sometime.
That's wonderful, Kevin. We thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
Kevin, thank you. Yeah, I echo that. You're doing marvelous work. We loved having you doing the breath work that so many people commented on and were so curious about on the seminar or group meditation that we did together. So we just want to thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun, and it was such a pleasure to be part of your community for that moment. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled Kevinly. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.